Hello everyone, I'm Satyajit and welcome back to my channel. You're watching the Python course playlist and today's video is on map, reduce and filter. Welcome again. I hope you're already clear with the previous topics. If not, please go back to the videos in the playlist and study them. Link to the videos are already in the description below. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on my future videos. So let's get started. Now today's topic is going to be map, reduce and so today's topic is going to be map, reduce and filter. Let's try to understand each one of them and then we will try to implement it using some of the examples. Now map, reduce and filter are the functions which bring a bit of functional programming to Python. Now what does that mean? That means all three of these are convenience functions that can be replaced with list comprehensions or loops, but provide a more elegant and shorthand approach to some problems. Now, if you're writing down a program in maybe 8 to 10 lines, you can cut it down to 1 or 2 lines by using map, reduce, and filter. Now, but not necessarily we use them very often, but I would say map is used very often, map and filter, but reduce operation has been decreased. We'll talk about why reduce is not used these days, but yeah, let's get started with the map first. Now, as we can see on the screen, map is nothing but it's a utility function. Maps a collection to another collection object based on certain functionality. This is how you should write a map function. Map of function and iterable object. That means you provide your function first, then your iterable object. Now, obviously, map is used when you are iterating over a loop. Maybe you have bunch of numbers and you want to make sum out of them, or you want to create the square root out of them, or you want to create the square of them. So obviously you can loop it through a for loop and then do it manually, but you can easily write down a function and call your map function so that everything can be done easily. You can see this particular example also. First name equals to Ram, Sham, Vinay, Gopal. So that's going to be my list. That's going to be my iterable object or iterable object, whatever you can call. Map the list to obtain the names in uppercase. So the objective is my output should be the uppercase of all the first names. So what I'm doing is I'm calling list of map of lambda x colon x dot upper. That's going to be my first function. Now what is my first function doing? It's nothing but x, it's converting x into x dot upper. On what it is converting? What is the iterable object? The iterable object is first name. So let's try to understand. So okay, next slide is all about filter and reduce. So let's try to understand map first by using a small example. So I have already defined, I'm going to take the example of area of a circle. For that, let's try to define a area function. So I'll define area of R. So I'm passing radius as an input to this particular function. And what I'll do is I'll return. So I'll be using a math library here. So let's just import the math library. Import math. So you can do any kind of mathematical operations and you can import this particular library. If you want to know more about this particular library, you can go and check out in Google. There will be a lot of documentation for that and you can definitely use it. There will be a lot of operations like square root, cube root, like a number of operations. Let's not talk about that. So I'm going to call the pi function. That's the reason I'm using the math operator. Okay, math library. So the area of a circle is nothing but we know it as pi r square, right? So it's pi into r. That is the area formula, right? So what we can do is I'll call math.pi into r into r. You can do this way or you can do r square. Okay, let's try to do this. So once my function is done, let's try to define a list. So let me define radius equals to 1 2 3 4 5. So let's just write down the plural form of radius, radii equals to this. Let's define areas equals to empty list. So what we'll do is we'll run through this loop of radii. So for r in radii. What we will do, we'll call a equals to area of r. Areas, that means my list dot append of what, of a. You can simply do this, or you can simply cut down this and directly do area of r. Okay, just to make it simple, I have done in 2 lines. Now this is what our method will be. Let's try to run this, and now I can call my areas. So areas looks like this. So let me make it as a list. Okay, or else let's just print it. Okay, so this is how my areas look like. Now how the same thing is possible in map. So let me create a markdown. Map is nothing but function and iterable object, right? So I'll just call map. What is the function? Area. What is the iterable object? Radii. Let's try to run this. So my output is going to be a map object. Okay. So how to convert it back to like to a user readable format? So let's try to call it using a list function. So list of map of area. So let's try to run this. Now you can verify the values are going to be exactly similar. Okay, so here obviously this part you cannot change, or else this part at least. So in the traditional method you are using this part. Let's just consider this part. You are using 3 lines, and the same thing is possible in just 1 line in a map function. So basically map is nothing but it is done using half of the lines, or you can say less effort and less number of lines obviously, and it's very much useful as well. Okay, so let's try to take one more example of map and try to understand. So I'm just giving it a break. So here let's try to convert, for example, if we have dictionary, how to loop in a dictionary and do some operations. Let's say I'm just going to convert. Let's try to write it down first. Convert Celsius cell scale to Fahrenheit. I hope my spelling is correct, but I'm not pretty sure about it. Celsius. Okay, let it be. If there is a mistake, it's okay. So let's try to create a dictionary. So temps equals to, let me write down Mumbai 35. Let's just copy paste this. Okay, and let's just replace it with some Berlin, Tokyo, Hong Kong, what else? Sydney, Abu Dhabi. Okay, something like that. Let's make it 30. Let's make it 31. Let's make it 25. Let's make it 12. Okay, something like that. So let's try to run this. This is my dictionary. Now, Celsius to Fahrenheit. What I'll do is I'll create a lambda function, lambda of data. Now, before going to that, obviously you should be aware of the function, right? Like, what is the relationship between Celsius to Fahrenheit? So Celsius to Fahrenheit is nothing but F equals to 9/5 into Celsius scale plus 32. That's your, when you're converting your Fahrenheit Celsius scale to Fahrenheit scale. Okay, Fahrenheit is nothing but 9/5. So if it is 5 degrees Celsius, it means 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, something like that. So let's try to create a lambda function. Lambda of date. Here I will pass my date of 0, 9/5 into data of 1 plus 32. Okay, let's try to run this. Now what I'll call is, I'll call my map function. So list of map. So here I have to pass my function. Now function is nothing but this one, right? Cell to F. On what? On temps data. Run it. So this is your final output. So I have it in Celsius, 35 degrees. It's 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. So this is how your work is easier to do in when you start working on maps. Okay. So our next topic will be understanding about filter and reduce. Now, what is filter? Now, obviously, as the name says, filter is nothing but it filters out some data out of your main data, you can say, right? Let's say you have 10 objects, 1, 5, 10, 12, 20, and if you want to create a filter that I want all the students with age more than 15, that means you are implementing a filter, right? So filter is a similar function, but it requires the function to look for a condition and then returns only those elements from the collection that satisfy the condition. Okay, let's not go theoretically and try to understand what is filter. Let's try to directly jump into the practicals so that it gives us a better understanding. So let me create a markdown quickly. Filter function. Obviously, I'll pass on these particular materials to you so that you can work out. Now, obviously, filter operation does nothing but it filters out the data. Okay. So let's try to take a simple example. So to use a simple example, let's try to create data. Data equals to, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this is my data. Now what I'll do is I'll try to create the average of this data. So average equals to, for that, let's use a statistics library, import statistics. So we'll try to import the statistics library, which I have just imported. So what I will do is average equals to statistics dot mean of data. Now, obviously, when you go forward and try to enter the field of data science, and you'll learn a lot more about pandas libraries, numpy libraries. Obviously, in those libraries, calculation of mean is possible. But yeah, before understanding those things, we are just concerned about the Python part as of now. So that is the reason I'm using the statistics library. Okay, so avj equals to statistics dot mean of data. So let's try to do it and print average. So what is the average? Okay, statistics is not defined because we have just created it. So the average is 5.5, right? It's simple. 1 to 10, we know the value is 55 and 10 items, right? 55 by 10, 5.5. Now, if you want to filter out this particular data and you want to say that I want only those data where the value is more than the average, something like that. So how to implement this particular scenario? What you can do is filter off, sorry, my bad, filter off. Again, filter takes two inputs. It takes F and data. Okay, let's try to write it down here itself so that we don't forget. Okay, so let's try to create filter of function and data. Now what is my function? It's going to be a simple lambda function, lambda x colon x greater than average, right? So whatever data greater than average, I'm converting into x. Okay, so lambda of this, what is the data? Data is nothing but my data. Data is my list, right? Fortunately, we have the same name. Okay, so let me run this. So this is a filter function. Again, how to see the data? We can convert it into a list of this filter. Now if I just enter it, I should get an output of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so this is your filter function. This is how you should write. So if you are not pretty confident about the lambda functions, you can simply create your own function. Like here we have created our function, right? So you can create a function like that and you can return that and use that function here also. That is also possible. Here this example is pretty straightforward. That is the reason I'm using lambda functions. Okay. Now what else? Now filter also helps us in reducing the null values. Now when we jump from Python, when we jump into data science or machine learning, when the data analysis comes into picture, we have to analyze the data. Sometimes you have a lot of missing values. Now what are missing values? Maybe I'll cover that someday in some other video, but I'll just talk about one or 2 points. Missing values are nothing but, let's say you are extracting data from some system, from some database. There are possibilities the data might not be captured, or there are possibilities the data might be empty because of any reason. So when you deal with those kind of data, you might have to ignore the missing values. Now again, as I told, handling missing values is a very separate topic, very specific to the data analysis part. So we will talk about that in a very separate video. But for now, if you have null values, how to handle it using filter function. So let's try to create a name list. Name equals to Ravi, Sham, Ram. Let's say there is a mistake. Some values are 0. There is a null value and Kuber. So just randomly I'm taking some values. So Ravi, Sham, Ram, Kuber, and there are 3 values like 0, 0.0 and something, right? This is a space. Now how to deal with this particular function, how to deal with this particular situation, how to extract only the valid values? You can create a list of, now let's create from the first step, filter of, there is a none operation. Now my function is going to be none. Okay, and the data is going to be name. Again, if I run this, it's going to be filter function. Simply call your list operation. You can see Ravi, Sham, Ram, Kuber. So all these values are ignored. So this is nothing but it's kind of internally it's a Boolean activity. Anything which has values like 0, 0.0 or open braces or something like this. So these are treated as false operations and ultimately are ignored by this particular filter method. Now obviously we have to keep in mind that some cases 0 and 0.0 might be a valid value also. Now this is a name list, which is okay. I understand that. Now if I have a list of numbers 12, 15, 20, so So something like this. Let's try to do this. Okay, I have this number. Now I'll call my, let's make it as number. Okay. You can see only 12, 15 and 20 are selected. 0 is not selected. So in certain scenarios, you have to understand based on your domain knowledge, based on your experience, you should understand what type of list or what type of iterable object are you working with. Accordingly, you have to use your none function. Okay, because 0 can be a valid value, right? Some customer sales might be 0 when you are dealing with a age operator, so obviously age cannot be 0. In those cases you can use your none operator, right? So you have to understand where to use and where not to use. So these are the some of the drawbacks of filter, but yeah, these drawbacks can be utilized properly based on your knowledge. So let's jump into the last topic, which is nothing but our reduce function. Now reduce is an operation that breaks down the entire process into pairwise operations. So it is into, it's not visible in this particular slide, into pairwise operations and uses the result from each operation with the successive element. Now let's try to understand using a small example. Obviously, theory part will be a little bit boring. So let's just directly jump into the practicals part. So I'll just write it down, reduce function. Now what does that do? We will try to understand it. Okay. Now how to implement? Obviously it's going to be same, reduce of function and data. Now I'll just talk about why reduce is not much used in Python 3+. Reduce is not a built-in function. Okay, it has been moved to functools. So we'll use functools library and see. But some of the scenarios, reduce function is not, I would say it's not much used, because it's when you write the programming based on your traditional method or using your reduce method, it's not going to help you with respect to the number of lines. So there is not much of necessity to use reduce function. Let's try to understand what reduce function is. You can see reduce is nothing but it's a function of f of xy. Now f of xy, where reduce f of data means, so it's a iterative process. Step 1, value equals to f of d1 d2, then value 2 equals to f of v1 value 1 d3, and it goes on, right? Now let's try to understand how it works from the practicals point of view. Let's try to create a small example. So from functools, import reduce. I hope I'm writing it correct. Okay, it's correct. Let's try to multiply all the items in our list. Okay, sorry, in the same cell. So let's create my data. Data is 1 2 3 4 5. Let's make it, keep it simple. So let's create a lambda operation here. Multiplier equals to lambda x comma y, x into y. Okay, now what to do? Reduce of function. What is the function? Function is nothing but my multiplier. Now what is the data? Data is data, right? Let's try to use this. So the output is 120. That means first it is iterating 1 into 2, then 2 into 3, then 3 into 4, then 4 into 5, something like that, right? Now the same thing is also possible using your traditional methods, right? Product equals to 1. Let's say I define my product as 1 for x in data or for d in data. Product equals to product into x, right? So we are going to multiply all the elements and then return product. Sorry, x is not defined. Okay, you can see here what it is doing. It is calling your multiplier. So we have a multiplier function which is nothing but x into y. Reduce function, if you look back at your slides, value 1 equals to function of d1 and d2. Then value 2 equals to function of value 1 and d3. That means first it multiplies 1 into 2, it stores it in a value. Okay, value 1 equals to 1 into 2. Now val 2 equals to val 1 into 3. Val 3 equals to val 2 into 4. Val 4 equals to val 3 into 5. And return val 4. So this is what is happening inside your reduce function. Now you can say that obviously this was used earlier, but now you can see that the same piece of code, why to take an overburden, you can simply write down this code using a small for loop, right? So it's again a developer's call. If you want to use reduce function, you can use, but yeah, the main fundamentals which I'm going to which I'm explaining is that the same thing is possible with just 2 to 3 lines of code. There is no need of reduce function, but yeah, it's all up to you how to do it, right? I don't know why it is returning like this. Okay, so this is all about map, reduce, and filter. In the next video, we shall be talking about some other advanced topics like file handling, how to do file handling, and what is the various exceptions and errors which occur in Python while debugging or while running codes. And again, of course, not we have iterators and generators, and at the end we do have the Python for data science program as well. Okay, so that's it for today's video. If you like, please like the video, share among your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.